Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Welcome everyone to Birmingham, Alabama and George Barber's Dixieland Delight. With its 16 turns over 2.4 miles penned by Alan Wilson just a little bit over 20 years ago, Barber Motorsports Park features a flowing layout with numerous elevation and camber changes that challenge the most seasoned racer. And while the circuit has gained a reputation as maybe a bit of a processional track for the likes of IndyCar, the lower speeds of tonight's racers should hopefully make for a great evening of racing here for week number 5 of the Ray Esports Racing League's winter season, brought to you by Grassroots Motorsports Magazine, Spec Racer Sports, Common Gear, and Grass Paddock Motorsports here on Apex Racing TV. I'm Greg Ginsburg with Tim Cox in the announce booth and Jonathan Grabowski in the virtual production trailer. And for those of you joining us for the first time here this evening, first off, welcome. And we've got 9 weeks of action across 4 different classes. We've got Spec Racer Ford, we've got Spec Miata, who's out on track right now, starting their qualifying session. And new for this season, 2 touring car classes featuring the Volkswagen Jetta TDI Cup car in one and the brand new Toyota GR86 Cup car in the other. And each class races 6 times over the course of that 9-week season. And on tap tonight will be 2 20-minute sprint races. First up, as I mentioned, going to be Spec Miata, and it's going to be their 3rd outing of the season, followed by Spec Racer Ford with their 4th. And we'll see the touring cars next week. And so good evening, Tim, and it's great to have you back after a well-deserved week off.
Well, I've only just about recovered from the madness that was Road America, to be fair,
right.
Greg. It was, yes, that's a very good way of putting it. Well, tonight, it's very different, and I think it's going to be interesting to see our drivers manage it. Great circuit to hot lap around here, designed of course around motorcycles, but a little bit tricky for cars to overtake. But I'm sure these guys won't get that the memo on that one. They'll find a way somehow, some way.
And they might be like Morgan Burkhart here to use the grass rather than the actual blacktop in trying to make a pass. Yeah, I mean, that's always the challenge here, Tim, is that, you know, you've got all of these flowing turn complexes and there really isn't one heavy braking corner, except maybe the hairpin over at turn 5, but there really aren't many heavy braking opportunities here, and you just have to learn to carry speed and try to learn from the mistakes of the driver that's in front of you. But let's do this. Why don't we, and hopefully he'll keep the car on the pavement this time, why don't we turn things over to Morgan Burkhardt? He is going to give us a very technical drive around and tonight's track guide of Barber Motorsports Park.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2.4 mile 16 corner Barber Motorsports Park for a lap in the Spec Racer Ford. As you're coming down, you're going to break the one board, just dance the car and hitting the apex. Not going to track out all the way to come into the entrance to turn 2. Just going to trail in and hug the inside line the entire way around the corner, and then starting to track out, floating as much speed as possible as it's really steep up the hill into the hairpin. I just want to carry as much speed, straight line it, no steering angle to carry as much speed. Gonna brake just after the 2, kind of a double apex hairpin. Gonna touch the curb a little bit for some extra rotation, and then using all the track on the exit. Again, carrying the speed, it's the name of the game in this car. And then a slight, that's not really a long straight, but into what I call the Cindy bit, or the corkscrew. Really just floating the car, not really trying to use too much brakes, straight lining it as much as we can on the throttle early, as this is a really long, not really a straight, but in this car it's basically a straight because it's flat out. Straight line in the chicane, carrying as much speed as possible through it, using all the track, no steering angle, and then into the big bad chicane. You brake at the one board, using all the curbing, you know, making sure that we can straighten the car out, make it dance through the corner and not get too light. Turning in just a little lift, kind of keeping it tight, and then coming out wide before the penultimate corner. Just dancing it through here. I'm gonna come back track right to come in track left for the apex, widening up that corner as much as possible, opening that radius and getting a good run onto the front straight for Esports.
All right, and thank you so much to Morgan Burkhardt for tonight's track guide of Barber Motorsports Park. You know, Tim, I had to edit out the time that Morgan said he put in on that lap, but suffice to say, none of our drivers are here in qualifying as fast as that lap that he put in the track guide. But we're still, what, about 2/3 of the way through qualifying, about 10 minutes through this 15-minute lap. Look at that nice drift by Deacon Greenfield, Tim.
Nearly stalled it out, but just lost the rear end there, and well, parts of the grass. No, back to the pits he goes with 5 minutes left in qualifying. You're saying about turn 5 being the only opportunity for really overtaking around here, Greg. You can, but sometimes, if you can carry that run, you spoke about momentum earlier, that is the real key around here. If you can carry a bit of momentum out the corner and get to the outside, driver's right on the exit through 6, you can then sneak up the inside into 7, but it does require quite a bit of momentum and a bit of luck to go your way as well. It's just seeing this very section I was just talking about there. But then
Yeah,
realistically,
exactly.
sometimes turn 1 as well, that's another potential chance to sneak one in there, but it's tricky.
It's very tricky, and maybe the best opportunity that you see going into turn 1, and it's actually not so much in turn 1, but up the hill towards turn number 2, is we'll see it many times on the start where the car that is to the outside, to driver's right, going into turn 1, if they can get on, maybe turn in a little bit later and carry a little bit more speed, they have the opportunity to really push that car deep and underneath the car from the inside before they get to the apex at that long sweeping, really double apex corner of turns 2 and 3, as then you then start coming back down the hill. And of course, since you're running uphill quite a bit towards turn number 2, it really helps you again if you keep your foot in the gas and you let the momentum help you out, as it looks like we're still having quite a number of drivers here having some issues getting getting the power down and keeping the rear end underneath them at that corner there over by the hairpin in particular. Tim, maybe they're all getting scared by the big giant spider right on the outside of the track.
Well, there you go, right on cue.
Yep, and there goes another one. That's Charles Vaccaro going around. Hey, real quick, Tim, as we get ready here now, it has been a couple of weeks since we've seen the Spec Miatas on track. The last time we saw them was 2 weeks ago at the National Park Speed at Road America, where Giancarlo Schooler took the win over Caleb Patry. Margin of victory there, 19 thousandths of a second, with Beans Forster coming in third, Murphy Nichols about 4 seconds back in fourth, and Morgan Burkhardt, who definitely had some issues during that race, another 5 seconds back from there. And so if we take a look at the point standings now, and again, this is after 2 rounds in Spec Miata, Giancarlo Schooler, he's got a 5-point advantage right now over Morgan Burkhardt, another 6 back to Beans Forster. Andrew Wozencroft, who only managed to finish 11th at Road America. You can see he is currently sitting tied with Michael, and actually I think we've got him down as Lewis Lockshine, but Michael Lockshine there in the battle for 5th with Jim Brewster also tied. So a 3-car, actually tied for 4th, so a 3-car tie there for 4th position.
What a race it was as well.
Yeah, it was.
Well, worth going back watching, obviously after tonight's broadcast.
That's right. So we've got that one. I've already told Tim that he needs to go back and take a look at the Jetta and GR86, the touring car race that we had last week at Sonoma Raceway. That one, I don't know if it was necessarily one for the ages, but we had a tremendous wreck on lap number 1 that definitely for those of you that may have missed it, I'd recommend going back and taking a look. All right, also, as we're talking about some of those touring cars, and we've got a couple of seconds before the checkered flag comes out, this will just make things a little easier. I think, Tim, going into race number 2, let's also look back at our T3, or our GR86 Cup cars, and this was at Sonoma, where Caleb Patry, commanding win for the 2nd round in a row. With his GR86, almost 7 seconds was the margin of victory over Giancarlo Schooler. Murphy Nichols finishing in 3rd, with Miles Brown and Andrew Wozencroft rounding out the top 5. And if we then take a look at the point standings, it is an 11-point advantage right now, though, for Giancarlo Schooler, who has, oddly enough, no wins compared to 2 wins for Caleb Patry, but in the original race, Patry did not race with us and did not gain points. So 11 points separating those 2 drivers. Murphy Nichols, another 4 points back from there, and then Andrew Wozencroft and Jim Brewster, your top 5, and you can see how close it is after you get past the top 5. Yoshikawa, Justice, tied, and then only a single point separating Huffman and Greenfield and Wilson as you go down the order. So very tight there in the GR86s. And again, we'll see them next week at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the track that Tim never fails to make me laugh at.
Oh yes, oh yes. Well, as pointed out, it does look like an elephant's head, and it's one of those things. As soon as you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it. Yep. Thanks, man.
No problem. Absolute pleasure. I'm amazed that someone of your, array of, vast experience of commentary, real world and sim world as well, has never spotted it before. And yeah,
No.
it was one of those things.
Yeah, and now, as you said, you cannot unsee it, as we may not be able to unsee DJ Alessandrini, who's making his way through the final turn complexes here through turns 15 and 16. He's looking to improve upon the 137.09, which is our provisional pole time that Morgan Burkhardt put in here just a lap ago. And as Alessandrini crosses the stripe, he does not improve. He puts down a 137.42, and that means his fast lap of a 137.17 is going to stand. He finishes 7/700ths of a second off of Burkhardt's pole time, and we've got a few drivers still left out on track looking to complete their final flying laps. But for the moment, the driver of that number 40 machine, it looks as though he is going to be your pole sitter.
Those two are really in a class of their own. Yoshikawa is a further 3/10 behind those two. That's the sort of pace they're setting here, Greg. And I think, well, one of the two things going to happen: either they're going to run away at the front together and then battle out later on, or they're going to get stuck into other, which is going to allow the rest of the pack to stay in touch.
Stay in touch. Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this one plays out and how they work around each other, Burkhardt and Alessandrini. I get the feeling they're going to get stuck into one another, though. I just got the feeling, Greg.
Yeah, and I have seen both Morgan and DJ race one another before, and it is definitely a chess match between the two. And if I had to guess, I would pick door number 2, Tim, where they managed to keep the entire field in sight. But we've got our drivers gridding up, and let's take a look. Your front row, as you mentioned, is going to be Morgan Burkhardt with a pole time of 137.093, 72 thousandths of a second back from there. DJ Alessandrini, he's going to start to the driver's right. And remember what I said, Tim, going up into turns 1 and 2. The advantage that perhaps the outside lane has. Nagase Yoshikawa is going to start third tonight with Giancarlo Schooler starting in fourth. Then we've got Beans Forster and Skip Brock. Kevin Zhu and Brad Gould will make up row number 4 starting 7th and 8th. Then John Wilson and Matt Snow will round out your top 10. We then have Megan Overstreet. She's going to start 11th tonight. Charles Vaccaro will start in 12th. And then we've got Deacon Greenfield and Andrew Wozencroft starting 13th and 14th, making up row number 7.
Moving through the field, I mean, it's a stacked field as always. Lewis Lock showing Stephen Bleffen. Then we've got Michael Snow with Andrew Benner alongside the company on 9th row. Joshua Justice with Jim Brewster running out the top 20. Seth Spallman, he's got Jeff Andrews company on the 11th row of the grid with Rich Green and Felix Borodati. Disappointing for Borodati there, 3.5 seconds off the pole lap. But
yeah,
and
it looked like Borodati was having a lot of trouble. Now, perhaps the biggest surprise here, and we haven't seen him reappear yet, Tim, Josh Soto, driver of the number 07 machine, who was our 3rd fastest driver in practice before we went on the air. He did not set a qualifying time, and he has not joined the session. We may see him start from the pit lane here tonight, and we saw him do that at Sonoma Raceway last season, and it worked out very well for him. But with this field here, it may be quite a bit more difficult, especially with the drivers that we have at the front of the field. All right, so let's talk quickly about our sponsor for tonight's first race of the evening, and that is Grassroots Motorsports Magazine. Built for the true sports car enthusiast, Grassroots Motorsports has one mission: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it's online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print or in person, the racers and builders, the car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports take you behind the scenes and show you how to make your car better. Along the way, they'll give you a taste of everything else this hobby has to offer, from 1,000 horsepower track monsters to cool street cars that get built in driveways. And they also maintain a collection of staff-built project cars, because hands-on technical articles aren't typed behind a desk, they're scribbled down in the garage. To not only read but become part of the story, head over to grassrootsmotorsports.com.
One thing, interesting thing, I'm really intrigued to see how Burkhardt plays this one, Greg. Of course, rolling start, as is tradition, and of course on your side of the pond. Does he back up the field, allow the safety car to get away from them, and then go to show that he almost, starts single file almost at the front?
Right.
Or does he leave as late as possible to ensure that Alessandrini hasn't got a run on him whatsoever? I mean, luckily we don't have too long to find out. It needs to be one extreme tactic or the other, because otherwise Alessandrini's going to, I get a feeling he's just going to nip up the inside and try and take this one from Burkhardt.
Yeah, and I've been wondering about that myself, because Burkhardt has been club racing now in real life for the last season, as Alessandrini has been doing it for a couple of years now also. And in typical Sports Car Club America road racing, the pole sitter is supposed to maintain the speed of the pace car until that green flag comes out. A little bit different than what we see in iRacing. So we'll see here if Burkhardt gets on the throttle. So far, he's keeping that pace, and the field staying all lined up there. You even saw where Alessandrini got into the brakes for a little bit as they came onto the front straight. And there you go, green flag is in the air, and maybe a tiny touch of contact there as Burkhardt keeps the car center of track. He's going to try to hold off Alessandrini as they come up the hill, but as I suspected, there you go, DJ Alessandrini pushes the car all the way to the white line, all the way to the inside, and he might have a slight advantage over Burkhardt right now as they start to make that run down the hill and over towards the hairpin. They are still side by side. Right behind them, we've got Giancarlo Schooler in the number 111 machine, then Skip Brock and Yoshikawa. And we are still, for the most part, 2 by 2 as we head back through the field. But DJ, it looks like it is only now coming out of the hairpin that who is going to lead this race has been decided and determined as Morgan Burkhardt takes over the lead, and Giancarlo Schooler, his teammate from Delta Sport, has managed to get ahead of DJ Alessandrini as well.
Schooler was really helped, Greg. Running to turn 1, Yoshikawa was up the inside and really threatening Alessandrini. However, he just got onto the curb and got a bit spooked, got out the front throttle, and that's what caused like the left line effectively all to back up and check up, allowed Schooler to then make a bit of progress as well. That was getting a bit loose there as Schooler across the top up the crest of the hill. That's really allowed Alessandrini to catch right up and be all over his bumper, and Burkhardt just pull out of that little bit of an advantage that could really be telling for the end result of this race.
Yeah, and you know, we were wondering whether or not Burkhardt and Alessandrini battling would bring the rest of the field up to him. For the moment, they don't seem to have that, or Burkhardt doesn't seem to have that concern, as Schooler seems to be backing up the field. As we look a little bit further back, as the majority of the field here has all gotten in line. We were just watching Andrew Benna and Lewis Lockshine, the 2 orange machines, and looks like here going off, Charles Vaccaro had a bit of an issue there and put the car off track and has now rejoined in the red and blue number 221 machine as he's following Andrew Wozencroft in the 80, who had a great run last year. Oh! And that's for Skip Brock Jr.
Round he goes. This is pressing this. You've got to wait for the whole field to come by. Nothing
Skip Brock, a Spec Miata driver in real life, down from the Atlanta area. And unfortunate for him, he's now going to find himself all the way at the back of this 27-car field. Let's take a look and see exactly what happened as they came down to the hairpin.
I think he's caught the curb and just lost it by himself. There you go. There's a bit of a bump on these curbs, Greg. And it just really, you know, it causes the inside rear wheel just to get ever so slightly airborne. And that's just enough to destabilize the car, and it's so easy to lose it across the curbs around here. And that's cost Skip Brock 20 places. Ooh, that's Overstreet off, I do believe. And I think Snow's had a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I believe that's the 044 of Overstreet. And she as well is waiting for cars to go around, and she is going to find herself back with Skip Brock Jr., I think, as well as I think Jim Brewster had gone off earlier, as well as that was the red number 933 of Brewster that was coming up. Let's take a look here.
So they just lost the rear end through the momentum, the weight transfer there, Greg. Just caused that pendulum effect, and around the rear end of Overstreet's Miata went. Vaccaro's, well, let's look at those replays. Vaccaro's had another issue. He's dropped more places. Charlie Vaccaro not having the best opening stage of the race. He's down to 25th. He's dropped 13 places already. Wow. Some big casualties here.
Indeed, and you can see here, because of how crowded the field is, how tight this track is. If you go off track, and first of all, I'd like to commend these racers as they go off, that they're holding their brakes. As that's Beans Forster now going off, who was our Spec Miata champion last season. But as these drivers are going around, they're holding their brakes and they're waiting for drivers to go by and waiting for a hole in traffic before rejoining here. So let's take a look and see exactly what happened. The Beans going down into the corkscrew here at Barber. And you know,
snaps on it.
Yeah, and just we're seeing the rear end step out here. Not sure what the temperatures look like here at the track this evening, but certainly, and we saw this in practice and qualifying. Well, there you go. Only 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a lot of humidity, and the track surface not all that much hotter. But these drivers have definitely had some challenges putting the power down, keeping the car underneath them. But I think also a lot of that, Tim, is just simply the as you mentioned, the curbing has the opportunity to really lift the rear end of the car up, but also the extreme camber changes here, and where there may be a groove with positive camber, if you come out of that groove, the track will very quickly flatten out. And so a lot of the you may see that the rear end of the car suddenly doesn't have the profile of the track to hold the rear end in.
Oh, a bit of contact there coming through 5. Oh, we've got more people off as well. I think Justice won the course up in that.
Yeah, I was going to say Justice, and I think John Wilson as well. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was John Wilson leaving the pit lane. Rich Green and Josh Justice there. Here's the number 97 machine. Yeah, a lot of activity there at turn 5 all at one time.
It's all lapping, isn't it, really? Justice all by himself. He's going to catch that curb. Oh, well, he caught it early on. It looked like it was okay, but just loosened that rear end. And then the 12 there of Rich Green having that sympathy spin and cost them both so dearly. I mean, it's, as you mentioned, the track temperature is definitely playing part of it. We say in the UK, it's on the toastier side of warm.
Yes.
100 Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius. So, and it just makes the surface be a little bit skaty, and that's what's catching a few of our drivers out here. Rear end seeing really loose. Interestingly, we saw a bit of an onboard earlier on with Schooler, and he was, as mentioned, very little steering input. He's basically using the throttle drag to steer the car and almost dance the car through the corner. And I think that's what's allowed. Well, the top 3, they're clear. They're 5 seconds clear of Yoshikawa in 4th. Just see Rosencroft have a little look at the inside there into 5 that we spoke about earlier. Nice little move. But yeah, top 3, different league of their own right now, and the rest is pretty much then a battle for best of the rest, which Yoshikawa is currently leading in the 98 machine.
Yeah, exactly. As Yoshikawa's got Zoo and Gould behind him, we're watching, and Matthew Snow as well. We're watching the third pack now, the third pack of 3, and this is Deacon Greenfield currently running in 8th, and Deacon started off in 12th position earlier tonight, and then Beans Forrester and Andrew Wozencroft, as we just saw Michael Snow in the 077 machine having some issues there, and I think Wayne Buttermore having some issues as well. May have gotten a slowdown penalty there, but it is
Spielman, sorry, he was caught up in that as well. He's jumped to the pits, Greg. So clearly too much damage to carry on with his car. Well, let's take a look at the replay. Maybe this might give us a few answers. So there's the Ford Seal Small that caught that curb that I spoke about earlier. And no.
Well, we're just going to assume there was a big contact there.
Yes,
we saw the smoke.
Yes, there was a big old contact. Nowhere to go. Smallman in the middle of the track. Loses it. Just catches the grass there, which just flicks the car back around. Wow.
Yeah, there was really nothing the other car could do there. As I had spoken about how the drivers were doing a very good job locking the brakes down. The one thing that we've seen here in iRacing of late, Tim, is that might as well not be grass. It may be ice. That when you leave the track surface, much like in real life, you have no real control, but it seems almost as if the velocities pick up when that happens. As we're back to watching this battle between Greenfield, Forster, and Wozencroft in the battle for 8th position. Is Wozencroft's fallen off just a little bit, but you can see that Beans is starting to try to work over the 36 machine of Greenfield and maybe starting to dictate a little bit where that car goes as they come now under braking here going into the S's.
He's just, as you mentioned, just trying to maneuver Greenfield around. He's done it successfully there. Sneak the car off lot, sneak the car on the inside, just by maneuvering around, forcing him offline. And it's like a pendulum effect, Greg, where you end up, moving around so much that it's hard to get back onto the racing line. And, well, a great bit of driving skill there and racecraft from Forster.
All right, it looks like we've got Michael Snow, who has joined Seth Spallman on the pit lane. The 077 cars issues continue there, and we'll take a look. Actually, I think we've got multiple Snows on the pit lane now. We've got both Matthew Snow and Michael Snow.
No, there was never going to be room there. Just carrying that momentum you spoke about, and oh wow, big contact with the wall. They side barriers.
For him, he was already at the pit lane when he came to a stop. But that's you saw there how far that car just traveled along the grass, and the rate of impact there for the Snow machine. And it looks like Michael Snow has joined. Had joined Matthew Snow for a moment, but is back on track. But let's jump back to this battle for the lead with Morgan Burkhardt, with Giancarlo Schooler, and DJ Alessandrini. And so Alessandrini, after having led one corner on the opening lap, he has found himself stuck behind and I don't want to say stuck, but he's found himself back in third, trying to find a way around Giancarlo Schooler, who started in fourth position tonight, got a very good start, and has done quite the job tonight. One, helping his Delta Sport teammate Morgan Burkhardt, but also just a very good job of positioning the car. And as you mentioned, Tim, and you know, this is something that perhaps the drivers a little bit further back in the field need to look at, is you know, especially as the rear end, as these cars seem to have a bit of oversteer built into their setups, you know, using the throttle is perhaps the best way to position this car around here, not necessarily with that steering wheel.
Definitely, and I mean, it requires quite a bit of skill to be able to do so, Greg. Well, you know, more far better than myself, but it's a very fine art between, you know, getting the car turned and making it more lively, have that better, more positive turn into the car, but then A, not losing it, and B, managing that rear tyre wear. So easy to, it's a lovely little move up the inside there from Gould. Well, Greenfield just not having the best second half of the race, just moving backwards through the field as he lost out to Forster, and now Gould on his way through.
Yeah, as Forster makes his way then around Gould as well. And so Forster on a pretty nice little recovery run after that first lap off that he had. Here, next driver in line for Forster is Kevin Sue. The last lap, Forster was almost a second and a half faster than the number 05, and you can see how quickly he's made up ground and pulled right up to the back of that 05 car as they come out of the final corner, come onto the front straight as they complete their 8th lap, and starting lap number 9. And it is then a pretty big distance up to our 4th place runner, that whereas we had seen Yoshikawa and Sue, they were very close in qualifying and in the opening laps of the race. Yoshikawa now, he's got about 8 seconds of clear track ahead of him. He's got about 5 seconds of clear track behind him. You know, he just has to put his head down and try to race.
It's a really good place to be, out of the mayhem and the cacophony of drama that's happening right now on track, Greg. You know, you just maintain your own pace. You know, if you lose a bit, you don't have to worry, because there's no one behind you breathing down your neck. As we're seeing, that's, well, Forster right up onto the back of Zhu. Last time around, Greg, he's taken around about 4 attempts out of Zhu in the last lap alone, and Zhu's looking incredibly vulnerable.
He is, and you see Forster. I mean, he's unrelenting. He's taking the exact same tactics that he used on Deacon Greenfield 2 laps before, and really trying to dictate where the number 5 machine puts the car. And given how many opportunities there are, if you're even either slightly offline or you pick the wrong section of curbing, it is very easy to take advantage. But what Forster's going to have to worry about now is he's got Brad Gould in that number 97 machine, who for the moment was ready to come right underneath Forster, and could have really impacted the 231's drive there, but you'll notice as those two drivers are starting to fight, we're also now getting Andrew Wozencroft in that number 80 machine, who started 14th tonight, is now up in the 9th, and he is certainly now in this battle for 6th position. Oh, and there goes Greenfield. Greenfield with some issues rolling down the hill.
Big mentions to Andrews currently in 13th and Borodati, both up 9 places, the highest position gainers. I mean, helps a little bit by a few drivers retiring their cars and have earlier incidents, but you've got to be there to take those opportunities when they're presented to you. It'll be interesting to see how Forster handles this one, how much more he can pull out a gap. I mean, based on the pace he's shown already so far in the race, I think that's pretty much looking like 5th place is going to be Forster's. But up in front, they're still close as they've ever been, but nobody blinking yet, Greg. It's like a game of poker. They're all keeping their cards very close to their chest, and I think probably next time around, that's when we're going to start to see exactly what cards everyone's got.
Wow, and you can see there coming through turn 14 and 15, where Schooler gets a very good run. Actually had to check up a little bit on the brakes as he was closing down on Burkhardt. Didn't have a position to place the car as the track was transitioning back to driver's left to set up into the final turn. But here, you know, Schooler is looking very strong, although all of a sudden we see Alessandrini getting a little bit closer. But let's jump a little bit further back. Let's look at this battle now. Now turning into not the battle for 5th, but the battle for 6th, as Beans Forster has not only gotten around Kevin Sue, but he's opened up almost a 5-car length advantage in just half of a lap. And Sue now has to worry about both Brad Gould and also Andrew Wozencroft in that orange and yellow number 80 machine, as those two drivers are sticking right to the back of the 05 car. Deacon Greenfield, who had a little mistake coming through the S's 2 laps ago, he's just now starting to recover and is working to draft his way back up to the back of Wozencroft.
For me, Rosencroft is the interesting one in this pack, because I think he's going to pick up a couple of places here. I can see Zoo and Gould. Gould's definitely the aggressor against Zoo, and I can see maybe those two coming together, and Rosencroft is going to be there to mop up the spills, and I think he could potentially come away with a 6th here, but he's going to need a bit of lady luck to be on his side a little bit. But wow, up in front, this is all changed. School is ahead, Greg.
That's right. Coming out of the final corner is Burkhardt has a bit of a bobble, and we have a new leader. It's Giancarlo Schooler and DJ Alessandrini. He smells blood, and he is looking to attack, and he now pulls right up behind Burkhardt. Let's take a look and see how this transpired.
He ran it in too deep. It was a little bit of a nudge there from Schooler on Burkhardt. Not too sure. He got the car resettled, but there we go, offline, and that's what caused it. Mowing the grass. And that's the last Schooler ahead of Burkhardt, and Alessandrini was all over the back end of Burkhardt, but just lost a couple of attempts in the run between 3 and 5.
All right, let's jump back to that other battle right now that we're watching. Is Kevin Sue. He is without a doubt now, as they come out of the hairpin, getting literally pushed around by Brad Gould, as Gould had his back bumper. He was given the chrome horn, as they say here in the States, Tim, to Kevin Sue, but it might have really affected his run there, as Wozencroft, for a moment, I thought had actually pulled alongside of Gould, but as we saw there, Gould was able to keep the car to the inside. Wozencroft ended up getting a lot of curbing, and he now has to defend once again against Greenfield, and that's given Wozencroft maybe a little bit of a respite there, and turned it into a 2-car battle for the moment. All right, white flag is in the air, Tim, and I forgot how short these races can be.
Exactly, it's amazing where the time goes, isn't it? And, well, all or nothing now for Alessandrini. He's got nothing to lose. They've got a big buffer, 11.5 seconds, well, just over back to Yoshikawa. So they can afford to be a bit adventurous. Who's going to go for it? But running out of time, Said turn 5, that's the big opportunity. Here we go. Who's going to make it?
And we have the 111 car of Schooler. He goes in to defend, and a tap of the brakes there as they come through the hairpin, and that was the opportunity that DJ Alessandrini needed as he cut back underneath the number 40 machine of Burkhardt. And you said, Tim, that this was the time for these drivers to get adventurous. You know, we'd seen over the course of this race, I don't think, not that they didn't want to be adventurous, they just didn't have the opportunity here, as they were all running very similar paces. But 2 mistakes by Morgan Burkhardt sees him fall out of the lead, fall back to second, and then fall back to third. And so it's going to be very tough here for Burkhardt to find a way through the number 2 car of Alessandrini as they now come down almost 3 wide going into the S's. You saw Burkhardt let out of the throttle as both Schooler and now Alessandrini into the grass, as Morgan Burkhardt coming into turn 14 as they come up the hill moves into the lead with only 2 corners remaining, Tim, as they now have just 1 more. They make that left onto the front straight, and coming from third to the lead, Morgan Burkhardt takes the win in Spec Miata. Giancarlo Schooler holds off DJ Alessandrini to finish in second. The number 2 car of Alessandrini will come home in third, and now let's jump back as Yoshikawa crosses the line. He will finish in 4th position. And then this battle for 6 with Kevin Sue in the 05 when he needed to open the gap. He did. He will cross the line in 6th. Then Andrew Wozencroft in the number 80 machine. He manages, coming across the line, to beat out Deacon Greenfield by 0.02 of a second. Lewis Lockshine in the orange number 124 machine. He'll round out your top 10.
Wow,
what
a finish. Oh, I'm speechless, Greg. Morgan Burkhardt coming into that, I thought that's it. He is written off. This is going to be third for him. And you almost sound from your words as well, Greg, you almost had that bit of inkling as well. Or at least that's what I thought. And then, lo and behold, he walks away with the victory.
Yeah, you know,
wow.
As few mistakes as the top 3 drivers had made. You know, Morgan had made 2. It cost him both times. But we saw there, just as Alessandrini and Giancarlo Schooler ramped up the aggression levels, were tooth and nail fighting for that lead. And there you go. There's the shot, 3 wide going into the S's, and Burkhardt backing out at just the last minute and let the other 2 drivers push wide with Alessandrini into that ice, into that grass. And that is when you wrote that off, and Burkhardt just placed the car right between the 2.
I mean, I still can't believe it's second time round, Greg.
It doesn't look any less impressive there. All right, so let's do this. We've got both Giancarlo Schooler and Morgan sitting in the green room. Let's talk to our second place finisher, driver of the number 111 machine, Giancarlo Schooler.
Wow, Giancarlo, what a finish that was. I mean, did you think it was going to be the victory, or, I mean, second, still not a bad result, but, I mean, just talk us through those final few corners.
Well, maybe Giancarlo doesn't want to speak to us tonight.
But clearly rendered speechless, Greg, and I don't
Yes.
blame him. I mean, I was as well. I mean, what a finish that was.
All right, we'll tell you what. Let's go, and we'll drop Giancarlo back in the green room here. Let's bring in Morgan Burkhardt, your winner tonight in Spec Miata.
Morgan, we just try to speak to Giancarlo. He was rendered speechless over it. Just take us through these final few corners. I'll be honest, I thought that was it. You were going to finish in third. You walked away with a victory.
Oh, me too. I mean, the car was super loose the whole session. It got super slimy. The track heated up, and the setup wasn't optimal for it. And it was kind of just holding on for dear life. And coming into the final corner on I think it was the second to last lap or something like that, it got a little wiggle mid corner, and I went off and dropped back to second. And then DJ got around, and I was like, ooh, I'm not sure how this is gonna end. And fortunately for me, JC got a little loose coming out of the corkscrew. Kind of screwed his run up, and then I saw DJ and him go side by side, and I was just like, all right, let's set this up and get them both on the exit, and I was able to get there. So
I got pretty lucky with that, but I'm very happy with that result.
I don't blame you whatsoever. I mean, were you ever concerned a bit about tire temperatures as well with the hot track? And you mentioned your setup being very loose. Was that another factor you were having to battle with and manage the whole race long?
Yeah, it was definitely more difficult. You had to really worry about, especially the rear tire temperatures, as you were throwing the car around. It would not be as compliant as you'd like it to be, and it was just an extra kind of thing to juggle as you're going through the lap.
Oh, fascinating. Well, congratulations, Morgan Burkhardt, your winner here today at Barber Motorsport Park.
All right, thanks so much to Morgan, and you could hear in Morgan's voice, and even when he did the track guide tonight, Morgan's a little bit under the weather and losing his voice. So I want to thank him for joining us here for a couple seconds as he's going to go get ready for Spec Racer Sport. He may not be able to talk, but he can still drive the wheels off the car. Tim, let's take a quick little break and thank some of our partners and sponsors here with Apex Racing TV. And when we come back, we'll have race number 2. It's going to be the Spec Racer Fords here from Barber Motorsports Park, where it's season number 8 of the Ray Esports Racing League. It's the Winter Tour. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back here at Barber Motorsports Park for the 2023 winter season of the Ray Esports Racing League. I'm Greg Ginsburg along with Tim Cox, and after that, I'll call it spectacular finish to the Spec Miata race, we're now going to move on to some more Spec Racing, and this is Spec Racer Ford here, a very different animal, and these cars, you know, of course, rear-engined, and as we saw with the Miatas having some problems making their way with the rear end stepping out on them. I wonder what it's going to be like to have the weight of the engine back behind the rear axle here, and how these drivers are going to handle it with these cars there, Tim.
Definitely, and track temperatures still up in, you know, the high 90s. I think it's dropped literally 1 degree Celsius down to 37, so I think that's going to be 99. There we go.
Oh,
look at that. I'm getting used to this converting to the Imperial system. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real challenge. These cars very loose at the rear, you know, as you mentioned, all the weight, all the power going through the rear of the car, with all these off camber and, you know, changes and undulations. It's a real roller coaster of a circuit. Hot track temperatures, it's well, it's definitely going to be tricky for the drivers, and also they've got to live up to the finish that we've just seen in the Spec Miatas as well.
Indeed, but although when you know, with just 2 flying laps, Morgan Burkhardt moves up into provisional pole in the number 40 machine, with Miles Brown in the 333, second fastest Charles Vaccaro, and then you see right there the red number 933 of Jim Brewster, 4th fastest. But most of these drivers have only put in 2, sometimes 3 flying laps. Vaccaro, though, talk about Mr. Efficiency. He's got 4 laps already when most of our drivers, I think, we're a little late to the grid, only with 2. Hey, Tim, so as we're now just a little bit over halfway through this 15-minute qualifying session to set the grid, let's quickly fill our listeners and viewers in on our other touring car class, and these are the Jetta TDI Cup cars, who raced last week at Sonoma, much like the Spec Racer Fords did. And we'll get the Spec Racer Ford in just a moment. The TDI Cup cars, they had their 3rd race of the season. Again, they'll have their 4th race next week when we go to Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Tom Pendergrass took the win. Margin of victory 1.3 seconds over Reed Shanabrook, with probably not Michael Snow, but Matthew Snow finishing in 3rd. Morgan Burkhardt, who was part of that big pileup that I was talking about at Sonoma in the TDI Cup cars, he was your pole sitter. He finished a very distant 4th place, 14 seconds out of the win. Megan Overstreet finished in 5th. And so if we take a look at the point standings, and again, this is now after 3 rounds, Morgan Burkhardt, even with that 4th place finish, he is still your points leader. He's got a 3-point advantage over Beans Forster, and then there's a long way back to Michael Snow with 40 points, another 7 back to Seth Spolman, and then things start to tighten up a little bit as Trenton Kramer only 1 point back from Spolman in 5th. Frank Schwartz from Grass Paddock Motorsports, and we'll talk a little bit more next week about that great prize package that Frank Schwartz and Grass Paddock is offering up. He is currently sitting 6th, and as you can see here, going back very tight in the point standings. So let's look here at Spec Racer Ford, where Morgan Burkhardt, he didn't have a good night in the TDI Cup cars, but he took the win in Spec Racer Ford. Margin of victory 0.6 of a second over Beans Forster. Josh Soto, and I typically think of Josh Soto as a Spec Miata specialist, and unfortunately we didn't get to see him in our first race tonight because he did not make it to the grid, but he finished 3rd in Spec Racer Fords, and I'm surprised. That's the first time I've ever seen Josh Soto race in Spec Racer Fords. Megan Overstreet finished in 4th. Caleb Patry, who I believe started all the way back in 20th position, started at the tail end of the field when he didn't get a qualifying time in. He worked his way all the way up to 5th position. So a great race for Caleb. And now the championship standings. after 3 rounds. And again, this is going to be the Spec Racer Ford's the first class to make their 4th race here this season in the league. Morgan Burkhardt, 76 points, a 21-point advantage over Megan Overstreet, who now moves up to 2nd in the championship. She's got a 2-point advantage over last season's champion, Beans Forster, with Andrew Wozencroft and Jim Brewster rounding out your top 5. And then it's a bit of a jump back to Justin Huffman, who is 6th in the championship. And we've got all the points up there for you. But it is again, we're now with tonight's run going to be going into the second half of the Spec Racer Ford season with their 4th race out of 6.
Going to be a fascinating one to see how this plays out, Greg, for me, because, well, Andrew Benner, look at that. Purple in sectors 1 and 2, and then, well, didn't hook it up in sectors 3 and 4, but where's that pace suddenly come from he's displaying? That's a great sort of first half of the lap. Shame we couldn't close that out. Would love to see him on pole, but yeah, so to go back, Greg, I mean, it's going to be a real challenge for this. We saw how hard it is to overtake in the first race of this evening. These cars, even more so compared to the Miatas, about momentum. We really have to push along with them. They're the babiest of baby prototypes, as they, sometimes dubbed, and a real handful. And there's a real knack to them. I certainly haven't got that.
No, nor do I.
I generally cannot drive for the car for Toffee whatsoever. There's that Rosencroft, another cracking lap putting in yes again. And, well, I mean, these guys are just somehow managed to get a tune out of them and putting these great laps. And, well, I'm sure there's going to be a few elbows out, and that's going to be making progress here today.
There we go, as we see Andrew Wozencroft going around over at turn 1. And, of course, these cars, they're much lower to the ground. They're also much more stiffly sprung than the MX-5s are. And, there are certain portions of this track where we saw drivers attacking the course and using some of those curves, for example, in the corkscrew, in the S's, where there is a much larger opportunity to really unsettle the car. If you choose to use that same approach in these Spec Racer Fords, Morgan Burkhardt, who was already our provisional pole sitter, just turned in a new fast lap, Tim, a 134.36, and he is now almost 65 hundredths of a second, over 6/10 up on Miles Brown, who is our 2nd fastest driver on track currently.
It's a real statement of intent there from Burkhardt. 6/10 quicker than anyone else. That's frightening pace for everyone else sort of further back down the field. Other than that, Greg, they're all relatively evenly spaced. Some really competitive times and close gaps between some of our drivers. I mean, Gould and Vaccaro, there's only 200ths of a second separating those two.
Yeah,
just how
very,
close it is.
Very close. And Charles Vaccaro, a Spec Racer Ford racer from the East Coast in real life, certainly taking some of that track knowledge. I don't think he's ever raced at Barber, but certainly his knowledge of the Spec Racer Ford and Spec Racer Ford Gen 3 platform, making good use of it here. You'll also notice that Andrew Wozencroft, who has now taken his, I think he's decided to take the car back to the pits, as the checkered flag is now out on the session. So we've got a few drivers still setting flying laps, but Andrew Wozencroft very close to that pair of Gould and Vaccaro as well. Only about 1/10 of a second off of Brad Gould's time. So that should make for, I think, a very interesting race in the mid-pack, as Miles Brown on his final flying lap here. We'll see if he can get this lap completed, and I don't think it's going to matter now, as he runs the car off track going through those S's, the exact same place that we saw DJ Alessandrini and Giancarlo Schooler have problems at the end of that Spec Miata race.
Just having a bit of a look through the lap times right now Greg. Look, the few drivers left on track, nobody's really improving. If out there, well, let's just adjust his thoughts on it. Just sit in the gravel trap and do a few donuts.
Yes. Congratulations, Josh Justin. There we go. Perfect. Typically your race winner does this after the race, but I think this is actually the second round in a row where we've seen Josh Justice do the preemptive donuts, and pretty darn impressive, Tim.
It definitely is. It gives us some entertainment to close out qualifying, most certainly. And well, if you're going to do donuts, myself, I should take a bit of advice from that one and do them at the start of the race, because I'm never doing victory donuts come the end of the race.
No. Well, let's see. We may be here for another couple hours if Josh doesn't give this up. There we go. And I think now hopefully we'll see our drivers start the grid up. Indeed. All right. So on the pole, as we mentioned, for the second race in a row is going to be Morgan Burkhardt with a qualifying time of 134.364, almost 63 hundredths of a second faster than the driver that will start on the outside of row number 1. That's Miles Brown. Beans Forster will start on the inside of row number 2 with Megan Overstreet right next to him. Then we've got Jim Brewster and Brad Gould. That'll make up row number 3. And then Charles Vaccaro and Andrew Wozencroft starting 7th and 8th. Caleb Pocock and Skip Brock Jr. And Skip Brock Jr., I'm sure, definitely looking for a little bit of redemption after his Spec Racer Ford race. They'll make up row number 5 starting 9th and 10th.
Sam Tully, he's got Yoshikawa alongside him on row 6 of the grid. Row 7 being I was going to say Pocock, but slightly smaller grid we've got here. Stephen Bleffin and Deacon Greenfield. Joshua Justice as Andrew Bennifer Company on row 8. Row 9, the last complete row is Wayne Buttermore with Mark Sherman and Joaquin Effinger, rounding out your 19-car grid.
There we go. And as I always say, Tim, and you know it, if we've got Wayne Buttermore, Joaquin Effinger cannot be more than 2 cars away. And so waiting for our pole sitter to appear, and there he is. Morgan Burkhardt brings the number 40 machine to the grid, and our pace lap not quite underway, but it looks like we've got all of our drivers there on the grid. They should be rolling off, and here we go as the pace car now starts to bring the field around this 16 turn 2.4 mile Barber Motorsports Park course. And so let's now talk about our sponsor for tonight's second race of the evening. It's Spec Racer Sports, whose mission it is to help fuel and support your addiction to road racing. And Spec Racer Sports delivers by providing the parts and services you need when you need them at a fair, competitive price, all with exceptional customer support. Located trackside at Motorsports Ranch Houston, Spec Racer Sports offers exceptionally prepared Spec Racer Fords for rental as well as for sale. In addition, they offer storage and support, technical services such as chassis, dyno work, driver coaching, and they also offer fabrication. Find out more about Spec Racer Sports and their services by visiting specracersports.com. All right, so we're on board on this this amazing pace lap, actually jumping back and forth between many of the cars here. And, you know, Tim, we had that question in the Spec Miata race, what Morgan Burkhardt's, what his strategy was going to be for the start, and whether or not he was going to maintain the pace of the pace car, whether or not he was going to come out of the final corner and just nail the throttle and have an advantage coming up into turns 1 and turn 2. And you know, we saw him keep the pace car speed all the way until the green flag came out, and it almost came back to bite him when he went up the hill towards turn 2.
It did indeed, and Miles Brown knows, based on qualifying lap pace, if he doesn't get in front of Morgan Burkhardt in these opening stages in the first lap, then quite possibly Burkhardt's just going to clear off into the distance. And you can see the aggressive weaving there going on right now, trying to generate some heat in the tyres from the 333 machine of Miles Brown. He's got to be prepared. He's got to be ready. He's got to bring his A game to get ahead of Burkhardt but will he be able to do it? Luckily, we don't have too long to find out. It's going to be tough for him, but he needs to give it everything he's got here.
All right, and so the pace car now heads to pit lane, and Morgan Burkhardt has the field coming around the last 2 corners where they will wait for that green flag for our second race of the evening here in the Ray Esports Racing League. And you see Miles Brown, he's already cheating up just a little bit, and green flag is in the air, and we are racing once again here at Barber Motorsports Park. We see Josh Justice pop to the inside there from the back of the field, and as they come down into turn 1 for the very first time, Morgan Burkhardt comes across the nose of Beans Forster. Forster having to check up just a little bit, but Miles Brown, who started on the outside of row number 1, he now finds himself in third. Megan Overstreet slots into 4th position, and side by side, Jim Brewster, Skip Brock Jr. running wide. That is, I believe, Caleb Pocock, who's off, and now Sam Tully going off track towards the rear of the field. He's looking to rejoin Sam Tully, I believe, not having raced with us for a couple of rounds. Nice to see him back, but I'm sure he doesn't. That's right. There we go. As Forster gets around, and with Miles Brown sliding in the third. Pardon me.
Wow. I'll tell you what, I'm really looking forward to this replay to see how Forster's managed this one. It's as simple as down on the hill. Ooh, bit of a wiggle there from 333 of Miles Brown, and well, Burkhardt just didn't get the run off the corner.
Yeah, and even with Forster having to maybe get out of the throttle, having to adjust his line coming through that corner in order to avoid Miles Brown, who'd gone deep, he still managed to keep the pace and get around Burkhardt, as we see there going off Charles Vaccaro in the 221 machine. What did I say about his Spec Racer Ford experience? But I also said he had never raced Barber before.
You did indeed. That is just saving grace there, Greg, from the curse of the commentator. So
thank you.
Let's take a look at how this is all unfolded for Vaccaro. And run down to 5. 2. Oh no, so it's not into 5 apologies. And wow.
Yeah, he just ran wide at turn, and he never got the nose pointed down, never got the car to rotate on him. And I think it's just a question of just didn't get the braking done in time, Tim, and just was still carrying too much speed into the corner. He couldn't get the rear end to rotate.
Burkhardt's got back past Forster. It's hard to know where to look at these opening stages as Benner, Bleffen, Pocock, and Josh Justice getting involved there, all trading places, swapping around left, right, and centre, and a bit of the push going on here, a bit of bomb drafting. Barber Motorsport Park, you think you've seen it all.
All right, let's take a look, since we didn't have it on screen, where Burkhardt managed to get back around Beans Forster.
There we go, dips. Oh, Forster just got to the grass a little bit, which meant he would have took get out of the throttle. Into 5, up the inside. Great little pass there.
There you go. And whereas the lap before, Burkhardt did not get a good run out of the hairpin that time. Even from the inside, was able to get the power down, was able to motor out and get around the 231 machine. And we saw there at the last moment, Miles Brown had designs on getting around the 231 machine, just was not able to get quite close enough. But good little train that we've got going. Of course, there's Burkhardt, Forster, and Brown, but we've got Megan Overstreet, and we've got Skip Brock Jr. as part of this lead pack as well. So 5 cars, 1 leader here, as we've got Jim Brewster, who's a stalwart in the Weekend Warriors Spec Racer Ford League, and always seems to race incredibly well. But he's had a run of bad luck here in the Ray Esports League, unfortunately, Tim. And
just
we'll
not been his season.
Here.
Oh, there we go. Round he goes. Too much mustard there. As you like to say, it just hasn't been his season, has it, whatsoever? It's back live. Brewster picking up places. There's Vaccaro dispatched off. He's going to be on the inside. But doesn't even need to worry about it. It's going to be he's on the inside on the run into 7, but he's got it done.
All right, let's take a look here as Skip Brock, who is at towards the tail end of that train, and he has now managed to make up a position and has gotten around Megan Overstreet. So shift Overstreet now back into 5th position, and Brock started back in 10th position. So a great opening 3 laps. But now this Beans Forster going around at turn 15.
Oh no, it's all fallen apart for Forster. He drops all the way down to 12th there, Greg. Wow.
All right, let's take a look. I think I know what I'm going to see here, but let's watch as Beans Forster sets up for the final 2 corners, and just trying to make the turn in there from mid-track, and the rear end just walked out on him.
You see where he was desperately just trying to push it to get the best possible run, and just a little bit too impatient with the accelerator, a bit too much speed, and all that overspeed just caused the rear end just slip away from him. And once it starts going, well, it's incredibly difficult to try and save that one. And now we've got a 4-way fight for the lead between Bearcart Brown, Brock and Overstreet. And then a little battle between Gordon and Yoshikawa for 5th behind them. But these guys are 3.5 seconds down. They're only realistically the only way they're catching our top 4 is when they start all getting stuck into one another. But we've still got 3/4 of the race left, Greg.
Still a long way to go, almost 15 minutes remaining. That if these two decide to work together, you know, they are still about a little bit less than 4 seconds from the pack just ahead. Matter of fact, you saw as Overstreet was coming down through the corkscrew just ahead of them. They're not that far off of our lead pack, but Morgan Burkhardt now is starting to stretch things out over the rest of the field. In the last lap, Tim, he has opened up almost a half second on the rest of the field, and I don't know where it all came from, because that last time by, Morgan Burkhardt was only about 0.04 of a second faster than Miles Brown, but somehow that lead jumped from about 0.6 of a second to almost a full second.
Wow, I mean, this was the worry, really, wasn't it? When we spoke about it in the build-up to the race. Burkhardt gets out in front, then that could be him just disappearing off into the distance. And talking of disappearing off into the distance, Overstreet running wide on the entrance into 5, and now part of, well, just dropping in behind the Yoshikawa Gold battle, and just in front of Greenfield and Rosencroft, who've having a little bit of a
might have been
ding-dong.
trying to check to see exactly where Josh Justice was doing his donuts at the end of qualifying. But yeah, now we find Overstreet, who had been running at one point as high as 4th, now back in the 6th position, and she's got Greenfield as well as Andrew Wozencroft, as well as Stephen Blethen, and well, we might as well throw Andrew Benna and Caleb Pocock into that fight as well, that she has to be concerned with. But she's closing things up here.
She needs to as well. I mean, after losing all that time, all those places, and
yeah, she runs wide there, running down through turn 12, and you know, she may be able to pull if Greenfield and Wozencroft play nice. She may be able to pull them back up into that battle with Yoshikawa and Gould for what is now the battle for 4th.
really needs to just Overstreet, and well, this is going to happen dramatically with well, everyone getting into one another in this stage of the race. That's going to allow these gaps to shrink up and the field to compress back up again. You see Forster just in the background there, a bit of a recovery drive. Be interested to see how many places he can pick up in the second half of the race. It's a tall order for Forster, but if there's anyone who can, it's Forster.
And there we go, as Overstreet now is pulling Greenfield. Wozencroft's lost a little bit of ground just back behind them. It was as though Andrew Benna had maybe become a little fed up with sitting back behind that black, orange, and yellow number 88 machine of Caleb Pocock. Moved Pocock now back into 10th position, and more importantly, into the sights of Beans Forster, who's looking to make the recovery drive of the evening. As Forster now gets around the 88 machine, move him now up into 10th position.
Well, that's a couple of places knocked off for Forster. Next up is Benner in 9th, and not too far up the road either, Greg. So definitely a chance. It can be a bit more tricky when he dispatches with Benner, because then Rosencroft is around about 3 seconds up the road, and that's quite a bit of time to try and make up in the second half of the race. As we're seconds away from half race distance, half race time, effectively.
And here they come down to the one. Yep, here we go. And Forster works his way around Benna before they ever turn in, but he pushes wide, and you see there as Forster was just hanging on for dear life as the car just skirted the edge of the track surface there, and he had to yank it back across, but manages to do so and manages to keep up enough momentum that Andrew Benna cannot retake the position. So Beans Forster now up into 6th, as Caleb Pocock has designs on getting back around Andrew Benna as well. Nice little battle starting to form up there with Stephen Blethen in the green and blue 150 machine in the mix as well. But all the while those drivers all fight it out, that group ahead with Overstreet, Greenfield, and Wozencroft starts to shift away.
I mean, keeping half an eye on the battle for the lead, Greg, and I tell you what, Burkhardt is not getting away. Well, I say not getting away from Brown. He's just pulled out another 3 tenths on him after Brown had closed and eradicated 3 tenths out of that lead. But yeah, not quite getting away to the levels in which I would have expected Burkhardt to do in this stage of the race. And well, cracking drive from Miles Brown. So I keep in touch with him.
Yeah, indeed, and as you mentioned, Brown has been at times moving closer, knocking things down to about a half second, and then as he pushes the car, maybe starts to overdrive a little bit, falls a little bit further back. Another great run. He's not really in contention at this point for the lead, but Skip Rock Jr., we've got to remember, he qualified 10th this evening, and he now finds himself up into 3rd position. He didn't have the pace, obviously, in qualifying that Burkhardt or Brown have raced, but as the other drivers that were in that initial lead pack, like an Overstreet or like a Forster, have fallen off the track so far, and I know this is going to be the kiss of death. Skip Rock has managed to run a very consistent first 7 laps.
Really worked out for Brock, hasn't it? Absolutely great display from him, and great displays. Brown's closed up that gap once again. That's 4 tenths, in fact. It's this time last lap that Brown is taken out of Burkhardt, and like you say, he gets within around 3 tenths, and that's it. Just can't seem to get any closer, and then ends up backing out to around about half a second.
Yeah, exactly. And he now closes up through the final corner, gets a little bit closer, but there are definitely some places on this track where Burkhardt has the advantage over Brown, and vice versa, as we go back to this battle between Yoshikawa and Gould for 4th position. And Gould's starting to turn up the pressure just a little bit on the 98 machine, but much like we saw with a number of the battles there, as Gould drops a wheel into the grass, much like we saw with a number of the battles in the Spec Miata race, just maintaining isn't good enough here. That you really need to be able to pull up and have the momentum and carry the speed through the corners to pull up alongside and maybe dictate the entrances to corners of the car in front of you. Rather than just hoping they drive off course.
It's definitely what's happening right now out on track, as Blethen has got past Pocock in the back for 11th. They see if sort of been trading blows with one another for a little while right now. This battle definitely not done and dusted, as Pocock desperate to try and get back past.
And both Andrew Benna as well as Stephen Blethen both end up thinking that the best way through the corkscrew is just to shortcut it, and it doesn't work out for either one of them. Let's take a look here. I don't know if this was target fixation, as Blethen followed Benna right down into the turn complex here and through the grass, but we could see what happened. Benna just did not get the car woed down. It pushed wide, and Blethen just took the exact same path.
I tell you
so
what,
now
Pocock says.
Yeah. So
Thank you
Pocock
very
is,
much.
yeah, exactly.
And hoovered up those places. I think you're right, Greg. I think it was a little bit of tire fixation going on.
I think
here.
so. Well, you can see he ended up dialing in a lot of opposite lock there, and he had the wheel cranked all the way over when he went through the grass, and the car just went more or less straight right into the back of Benna. That was, you know, unfortunately for both of them. But look at this. Miles Brown now, well, he's about a half a second back, about 45 hundredths of a second back from Burkhardt. So I don't to say not much has changed, but what we're seeing is that that Brown has this gap on the first half of the course, whereas it has been at the back half of the course where Morgan Burkhardt has typically given up ground. So let's take a look here as both of them are pounding those curves.
Really, and these cars really do love the slipstream, and I think it's just where the course just opens up a bit around the back end of the circuit, Greg, and that's what I think is what allowing Brown just to, you know, eke out a couple attempts into Burkhardt's lead.
Yeah, and through those S's, you know, the cars are almost straight lining it, and so you can see where the draft and the slipstream still takes effect. And I think that's actually where we see Miles Brown making up the majority of that time, as he's able to just keep the car straight behind. The front ends of the cars don't change direction all that much, and he was down to almost 25 hundredths of a second at the end of the last lap. But now Burkhardt manages to stretch things out after turn 1 to almost 7/10 as we go back to this battle between Yoshikawa and Gould. And Megan Overstreet, she is slowly but surely been making her way back into that battle as well.
It's really starting to close.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, that's actually the battle for third with Skip Brock.
Yeah, Brock's come off track, Greg, somewhere, and that's what's allowed Yoshikawa to close up the gap dramatically down to, well, you see that right about a 10th. Let's have a look at the replay. So this is on board with Brock.
Yeah, so that's going down into the corkscrew.
Where have we seen that one before? Wow, how has he held that one?
Yeah, that was an amazing save, Tim. You know, obviously he lost a lot of time there in trying to get the car back underway, but an amazing save coming down through that very difficult section of the track, down through the corkscrew. But that has allowed Yoshikawa to make up a lot of time. And I'm sorry, Skip Brock.
Oh!
And yes, I'm sorry, Skip Brock. Because I will single-handedly take responsibility for ruining Skip Brock's lap and race as he goes off, and that is now going to move Brad Gould up to 4th, Yoshikawa up to 3rd.
Oh, those curbs yet again. They're a cruel mistress, claiming another victim.
And they both went to the grass, and somehow Yoshikawa just managed to get all 4 wheels back on the pavement. Otherwise, it could have very easily been a 2 cars off and done. But now, as we've got only 2 minutes remaining in this 20-minute race, Miles Brown is as close as he has been to Morgan Burkhardt since the time the green flag first came out and Miles Brown started on the outside of the first row. As Burkhardt had only 0.2 of a second separating him from Brown, he's now managed to open it up to 0.4 as they start to come up through those S's.
I think this is all about how much pressure Brown can apply to Burkhardt. I think he knows that the way the gap's been yo-yoing all race long, that this is a very slim to no chance that Brown will be able to make a move on Burkhardt. This all comes down to just being creative, moving your car around, filling the mirrors of Burkhardt, making him just miss his apex, miss his braking point, his turning point. And that's the other reason why, the way I think Brown's going to make his way and claim victory here.
All right, there you go. White flag is in the air. We're on the very last lap, and we know it can be done. As fearless as Morgan Burkhardt has seemed over over the majority of this season in multiple different cars and classes. I think we saw in that Spec Miata race, he can be broken. You know, he had very lucky circumstances that allowed him to get back to the win on the very last lap. But I think part of the challenge is he maybe got not necessarily sloppy on that last lap in the Spec Miata race, but he spent a lot of time watching his mirrors and seeing what the second and third place cars were going to do. If Miles Brown can get a little bit closer to Burkhardt here as they come through the corkscrew for the last time, and this is the section of the course where Brown typically makes up a couple of tenths as he gets into the slipstream. If he can get a little bit closer to Burkhardt as they come into the last 2 or 3 turns, into turns 14, 15, and 16, he has the chance. But at this point, Tim, as he's still 4 tenths back, I don't know if he's going to be close enough.
I don't think he is, Greg. Never say never, but this is looking like Burkhardt. He just needs to close this one out.
All right, and as they come through turns 15 and now into 16 onto the front straight, Morgan Burkhardt is going to take his 2nd win in a row, take the win in Spec Miata, and now he is your winner in Spec Racer Ford. Miles Brown will finish in 2nd. Nagase Yoshikawa, he started in 12th position tonight. He brings the car across the line. He's going to take the bronze. He finishes in 3rd. Brad Gould will finish in 4th. Megan Overstreet, did she cross the stripe? She did, and then she took the wall. Megan Overstreet will finish in 5th. Beans Forster will finish in 6th. Andrew Wozencroft 7th. Deacon Greenfield will finish in 8th. And now crossing the line, it's Caleb Pocock and Stephen Blethen. Andrew Benna will finish in 11th as the rest of the field now makes their way across. But great run there once again by Morgan Burkhardt, and we'll see if Josh Justice decides to do donuts here like he did at the end of qualifying. At least he didn't decide to do it on the front straight.
No, I will give him that one. We'll give him that one. Wow.
Oh, and there he goes. What do they say? Discretion is the better part of valor.
Something like that.
Oh my, there you go. As there's Brad Gould, who finished just off the podium today, but great race from Brad. Started in 6th, finished 4th, and but I cannot say enough about Yoshikawa, who started 12th tonight, to finish up towards the top of the field. All right, so we've got Morgan Burkhardt sitting in the green room, waiting to see. Let's give it another couple seconds and whether or not Miles Brown pops in. Otherwise, it could be a very quick end to our evening tonight, Tim. And there we go. Well, that's Nagase Yoshikawa has popped in. Tell you what, why don't we bring Yoshikawa in? I'd like to. I'm sure everybody would like to hear his thoughts on that that great run to the bronze tonight.
Best start ever somehow.
Nikisa, congratulations. I mean, wow. Up 9 places in the end, starting 12th. I'm sure at the start of the race, you didn't envisage finishing on the podium, or did you?
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, we know we had a good run. Really drove well. But yeah, a lot better than I expected. Really didn't have super great pace in qualifying, and just I don't drive this car terribly often, so just getting a hang of it. But yeah, locked in the race and really made up some spots, which was good for once.
Were you trying to be aggressive and make passes, or were you just letting the race come to you and just just whatever came your way came your way?
Yeah, no, on the start my plan was to be aggressive, but and it worked pretty decent. Made up a couple spots on the start, but I figured I'd kind of just fall back after that. But obviously people ahead had some trouble and picked up some spots and just tried to keep consistent and stay out of trouble myself. And it worked out in the end. I had better pace than I thought I would, and yeah, but I had a good start too. Made up some spots there.
Congratulations on Nikisa Yoshikawa. He ran out 3rd today here at Barber Motorsports by an incredible 9 places.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much to Nagase Yoshikawa. Let's now move over, and looks like we do now have Miles Brown, our 2nd place finisher. Let's talk to him, Tim.
Miles, wow. I mean, all race long, that gap yo-yoed between yourself and Morgan Berghardt. I mean, did you? I mean, I said at the start that it would take something brave, especially on Morgan's qualifying pace, 6 tenths quicker than anyone else.
Yeah.
Did you envisage you'd be able to stay with him as long as you did, let alone, have such a close finish?
I really didn't think I was going to stay close to him. I was thinking, like, at the start of the race, like, okay, I'm going to jump him as hard as I can, and I ended up losing a position. So I thought he was just going to sail off, but he would keep making, like, mistakes every once in a while, just enough for me to stay close, and his race pace was pretty similar to mine. So, I guess, I was able to stay in the fight, which was cool. So, I'm just kind of upset. Well, not upset, but, I just would have liked to nab him if I could, but it's okay. It happens. We'll keep going.
I mean, can we just take us through, those sort of closing couple of laps? Obviously, coming on to, certainly the final lap. Was it going to be the case of, right, if I can get within a couple of tenths, I'm going to have a lunge, especially into turn 5, always a great overtaking opportunity around here? Or was it going to be, I'm not going to risk it too much because at the end of the day, this is a second?
So I'm not really the type to really, dwindle too much on, like, what place I am. Like, I really wanted the win. I tried to think of it as just like another position besides just like a win, and like second place and third place. I wanted to just get him, you know what I mean? Like, there's a car in front of me and there shouldn't be, so I just wanted to get him. I just, I just really couldn't nab him, unfortunately. But I mean, we were close, and like I said, he kept he would just make every now and then a little mistake, and I think that was what was able to kind of keep us close. He was feeling the pressure, but the mindset was for sure to jump him if I could, like, even to maybe, I don't know, just maybe a little tap or so, nothing crazy, but definitely, ready to get there, ready to get close and do what I can, so.
I mean, a little reminder that you're still there.
Exactly, just a little tap, love tap, And I want to very quickly give a shout out to my sponsors, Driver Trainer Academy, Chocolate Dandy, and Me Shirts as well. But yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity, and thank you guys for commentating on this awesome race. Thank you guys.
Absolute pleasure. That's Miles Brown here, and they're finishing second here today at Barber Motorsport Park.
All right, thanks so much, Miles. All right, so let's now bring in Morgan Berghardt, who I think I mentioned it earlier, but it was important enough for his father to let me know that Morgan has the flu, and maybe a little bit off his game because of it. But if Berghardt's off his game because he's got like 102-degree fever, I feel sorry for everybody else out there right now, Tim.
Definitely, and talking of making everyone feel sorry for themselves, the rest of the field, where did that qualifying lap come from? 6 tenths quicker than anybody else.
Well, I figured that if I'm gonna maybe be driving this car at some point this year in the real world, I should probably start to put a little bit more time into it and get better at it. And it helped doing a little bit of practice beforehand for the lap guide to kind of put everything together. And for whatever reason, this car kind of clicks with me because it feels a lot like a go-kart, so it's quite helpful to just kind of jump in and go.
Definitely. Well, I won't pursue you too much. Obviously, you're doing your best Barry White impression, real deep and voice going on there and under the weather. But, well, congratulations. 2 wins for 2. Epic performance. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in a week's time, Morgan.
Thank you. And before I go, I'd like to thank my parents and my grandparents for making all this possible, and the rest of the team for supporting me and helping everybody out. So it's a good effort.
Certainly. Congratulations, Morgan Berghardt, winner here today. It's, in both categories, in Spec Miatas and in, of course, the Ford Spec Racers we've just seen.
All right, so thanks so much to Morgan. And while he was talking to you, Tim, I sent a text message to his father asking if he wanted to complete the interview for Morgan. Apparently couldn't run upstairs fast enough. All right, so let's wrap things up for tonight. As we had a great night of racing here from Barber Motorsports Park, but as we kind of predicted, Tim, not the easiest track to pass on, and it really came down to drivers making mistakes in some cases as they made their way through the field, and I think that's part of what made Yoshikawa's run and making up 9 positions so special here tonight. So as we wrap things up here at Barber, wanted to remind everybody that next Tuesday night, and that's March 7th, going to be 9 p.m. Eastern time, as it always is. We're going to be at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. We're going to kick things off with our touring cars, with our combined group of the GR86s and the TDI Cup cars. I think we're going to have a special guest interview there during that race as well. That's going to be our first race, and then we're going to finish up the evening with the MX-5s. And once we finish that up, I think all of our classes will have 4 races in the books. And so for Tim Cox, for Jonathan Grabowski sitting back there pushing all the buttons, pushing our buttons, you name it, I want to thank everybody for joining us here this weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday night from Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta.